Hi folks, this is Andy here from the Not So Dissident Future podcast from Over the Pond, and we're just going to play the second part of our interview, which started last week with Leonard Ulrich. So here we go. I do wonder if there's actually going to be some kind of waking up red pilling, because the people like Jordan Peterson haven't been able to speak. In fact, he hasn't wanted to. He's just working at his university, doing his lecturing and stuff like that. And the left is trying to shut down, like you say, Tommy Robinson, trying to shut down Jordan Peterson, shut down Ben Shapiro, shut down these people. And by shutting them down, it works in the favour of the person they're shutting down, because people go there for the scandal. Mm-hmm. Oh, he said this, and they've named him as this and made out he's right-wing something or whatever. And then they go and they find out and they go, oh, right, okay, let's have a listen to what he's saying. So I praise God for those kind of opportunities that people might red pill. I've heard of people coming to believe in Jesus by first discovering Jordan Peterson and then going and seeing his biblical studies. I'm not even sure he's a biblical Christian, to be fair.
No, he's not. No.
He's not. But then they've gone on to read the Gospels, and then they've gone on to Jesus, and they got saved, because they've started to rethink. And I think I read, there's a guy called Greg Kukul I saw the other day, fantastic guy. He was talking about taking some lessons from Lieutenant Columbo, but how to engage people for Jesus and for the gospel. And a lot of the time, you want to help people to think if they and examine their own thinking, their own kind of ideas. And that's what I think Jordan Peterson does. He helped. Even if you disagree with what he says, you come away a better thinker because you've thought about what you think, and we should all examine why we think what we think, and know if we don't think it, know why we don't think it.
Yep.
And the establishment, the elite, want to stop the conversation. They want to stop talking. They say we can't have discussions. It's offensive. It's argumentative. You'll offend. Kathy Newman says, "What right have you got to offend me or offend somebody?" Well, it's part of arguing. It's part of discussing. You're going to disagree with each other. It's part of being a human being. The right to be offended. That's how you change your mind. Otherwise, it would just say, stop the war, stop the music, everybody stop where you are. What you believe is what you believe. Don't let anyone change your mind. And they don't want the discussion, and they don't want people to talk. I thought it was great when Piers Morgan had Tommy Robinson on, and Tommy Robinson was able to speak. But again, it's this kind of matador method of fighting, the rhetorical games that are played by the people with the microphone, the media. It's very 1984. There's very few outlets where there's free speech.
I mean, and that's the thing with Kathy Newman is, because we were talking, it was our son that raised, he showed us the thing with Kathy Newman and Jordan Peterson. And, you just wonder whether she's perhaps as well. I mean, whether that's her or that she's trained, the BBC the media train their people to ask questions in that way and push in that way, and will say, so what you're saying is, so whether she's just like a mouthpiece of the BBC or it's her personally and her style, the way she is, I'm not so sure. It could just be that she presents him, because apparently Jordan Peterson had a decent conversation with her before she went on. Whether she just presents as soon as the cameras are on, right, go into that mode. This is how the BBC want me to interview. And BBC interview people, we call them the British biased corporation, So, they have this agenda, they have this technique of if they don't like the person they're interviewing, that is very much what they'll do. That's their purpose. So, maybe she only got to that job, to be what she is because she's learnt to play their game. I'm being devil's advocate for her.
You've been very kind to her.
Yeah.
But people get jobs because they're the way they are.
Yeah.
They get, oh, right, well, you can get through the net. You can't. You've got slightly the wrong thoughts. It's the same with evolutionary theory. If you can't get a job in science because you maybe have a couple of questions about Darwinian theory, you're not going to get through. It's gatekeeping. So I think there's gatekeeping. There's lots of people who'd like to have jobs in media and be journalists, but very few are actually investigative journalists. They're just mouthing a worldview that they all agree with. If you're going to get a job at the BBC, you probably a Guardian reader, because the adverts they put out are in the Guardian, which is left-leaning politics, the centre-left, So it's all one kind of flavour, and you're labelled. It's very interesting in the States, people are labelled, if they're Republican, they're labelled as stupid. Where's the president's brain? He's an idiot. He's a fool. Look at his hair. This. The press always just does that. It's just like a standard thing. You can't be a good or nice person if you're from that side. You've got to be evil, you're right wing or something. If you're left, you're a lovely person. You must be lovely. You care about things, even though you don't do anything.
Well, on that note, I plan to interview my member of parliament once my second film is complete. And the reason for that is because she came to my door before Canada's federal election was announced in 2015. And we got to talking, and I can't believe I'm about to say this. Okay, she's a politician. She's trying to get my vote ahead of time. And eventually, in our conversation, she bent over, did a full circle laughing at my belief in the Bible, and she called the Bible an example of circular logic. And I said, okay, fine, I'll let her have her cake, but she can't eat it too. Now, our Canadian Prime Minister, our lovely politically correct Prime Minister, who was doing a town hall, one woman in the crowd gives a response, and she ends her response with the phrase, of all mankind. And the Prime Minister stops her at that point and says, oh, we say people kind. I'm like, what? It just, every little thing like that, it just blows my little mind. So our Prime Minister had the glorious self-mandate of appointing 50% women to his cabinet, just because, okay?
Yeah.
And so one of the women that he appointed was my member of parliament, and she was given the position or the portfolio of Labour Minister.
Oh, wow.
And she was clueless, absolutely clueless. At one point, she's in a commission hearing, and somebody refers to the Charbonneau Commission. And for those of you who don't know, the Charbonneau Commission was a commission that looked into union corruption in Canada. And at that point, when somebody brought up the Charbonneau Commission, she literally turns to her staffer and goes like this, what's the Charbonneau Commission?
My question to you is, do you support accountability or corruption?
Suggesting that unions in Canada are corrupt, I recommend that he name them.
What about the Charbonneau Commission?
The Charbonneau.
It's like a referee not knowing what offside is. Mm-hmm. If you had any modicum of sports knowledge, you would know what offside is. But according to her mandate or her mentality, it's the evil white patriarchy that is constantly oppressing her, which is the real problem. Not her lack of knowledge. It's because we need to be, we need to have gender equality in Canada, and then everything will be a bed of roses. Well, that's not true. In her own book, I forget the title of it, Gloria Steinem admitted that Ms. Magazine, which was the magazine of the feminist movement, third wave feminist movement back in the day, was CIA funded.
Gloria, at the festival, you worked for the Independent Research Service.
That's right.
Well, exactly when did your own association with the CIA start, and in what fashion? Did they come to you, or did you go to them?
In 1958, when I came home from India, I discussed with student leaders, past and present, many of them active with the National Student Association, this kind of small foundation to encourage Americans to go. They thought it was a good idea, too. I was then told by foundations and professors and friends that I should not do this, that I would get in trouble with the House Un-American Activities Committee, the American Legion, all of those 50s people. And I became convinced that it was impossible. It was at that point that the student leaders said to me that they had in the past received funds for international programs from the CIA, and that they felt that this was important and could also be partly funded by the CIA.
Well, I mean, did you feel that you really tried? I mean, did you go around to all of the wealthy private foundations, wealthy private people, and explain your point of view and explain why you felt it was important that the United States be represented at these things in a certain way? What did they tell you?
They told me that, well, the Ford Foundation, for instance, told me that they thought we were too liberal and too controversial, and that we would endanger their cultural programs in Austria. I mean, the first festival was being held in Vienna. It was not encouraging at all, and the private individuals to whom I went often had particular points of view to put forward, which would have been much, much more restricting than the CIA funds were, which were free. I mean, no one was told what to say.
What do you mean they were free? You mean to say it was easier for you to work for the CIA than a private organization?
That's right. And the reason I think that comes as a surprise, as it did to me at the time. I mean, I had the conventional liberals' view of the CIA as a right-wing incendiary group, and I was amazed to discover that this was far from the case, that they were enlightened, liberal, nonpartisan activists of the sort who characterized the Kennedy administration, for instance.
You have not been working now for the CIA since 1962. You still criticize. You were down recently in Washington?
Yes, when the story broke that I had that I had for 4 years been a Central Intelligence agent, I was demonstrating outside the Pentagon underneath Mr. McNamara's office against bombing in Vietnam. And this didn't precisely fit with the image of a CIA agent, but then neither does the CIA.
Now that should tell a lot to a lot of people, okay?
Yeah,
the whole idea was to get both parties in a marriage working to fund the state. And that's the way Satan works. You know, if I'm a New World Order farmer, I would go to an existing virgin pioneer field, and I would rip up the existing structure, the existing network, okay? In terms of culture, ethnicity, religion, language, everything, okay? So now that everything is fractured, everything is malleable, ready for change. And I think, based on everything that we've been talking about so far, there's obviously a lot of tension in society. And I think the only thing that's required now to set the whole thing off is an economic collapse.
Right.
Yes.
Well, that's why I'd like you to perhaps explain blockchain and cryptocurrency, because I wonder if that isn't going to be the next step. We've talked about China and all the big brothery kind of stuff, and they are now kind of going cashless. But if you could explain that, because I mean, if whoever could monopolize that system and crash it, then you've just got everyone's wired up, aren't they? Then but you've got no choice. You're in or out. You're dead or alive, aren't you? So if you could explain what blockchain is, because I tried to explain it to Mel.
He did. He tried to explain it to me. Please explain it, Leonard.
Okay, the blockchain can be considered monitored digital DNA. Now, Jesus used analogies, parables, if you will, to explain complex things, so I'm going to do the same thing here. Inside every cell of your body is something radical. It's called DNA. It's a code of terabytes long. It's amazing. And how anyone can think that this code simply came out through random means is just beyond me. It's like a tornado ripping through a junkyard, and managing to assemble a perfectly functioning vehicle in any condition. It's ridiculous. So that code, your DNA, gives the instructions for that cell and has the complete instruction set of every other cell in your body. What is that? Why is that important? Well, that's important because whenever a virus or bacteria comes along, your body says, show me the code. And if that cell can't display the code, the body goes, hey, foreign invader, and starts triggering defense mechanisms. So if you have the code, you're part of that system. If you don't have the code, you're considered an enemy, not only biologically, but in the future, socially and economically as well. The code is maintained by a cryptographic system, hence the word cryptocurrency. You can encrypt things and you can decrypt things. It's like a door that is made much more secure by having the locks physically changed every 5 seconds. Try to pick that lock. You can't. By the time you get halfway, the lock is already changed. Okay, so that is so important because databases are insecure. If they're encrypted or cryptographically secured, then you have a secure, monitored digital DNA of a database. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm grasping that now. I was saying to Andy that I said to him, oh, is it a bit like, we have the cloud for data to be in this sort of virtual or non-material place? I still don't quite know what the cloud is in terms of the computers, but is it like a financial cloud?
It is. All it is a secure database. That's all that it is. For example, you could have a doctor sharing sensitive medical records with whoever's authorized to view those records.
Yeah.
And have those databases secure. Okay, so that if the doctor gets into a car accident, someone can't, have a 5-figure discount on that iPad and use that database for all kinds of nefarious purposes. That's happened before, okay? So databases need to be secured, and cryptography is the way to secure that. Now, only in the past year, in 2017, now I realize that we're in 2018, but cryptocurrencies have become in the forefront of economic news, primarily through Bitcoin. And I've said that Bitcoin is kind of like tulip mania back in Holland 300 years ago, when a certain kind of tulip was literally going for the same amount of money as 5 acres of prime farmland. It's just ridiculous. So I said, Bitcoin, if you look at this through the lens of history and through the lens of scripture, you can see how the powers that shouldn't be are using Bitcoin to suck people in to the electronic financial system through the possibility of financial gain. That's all that it is. I mean, Coinbase is just one cryptocurrency database in the United States, and it was gaining over 10,000 new accounts per day. It's ridiculous. Coinbase was getting more accounts than Charles Schwab, which is like, like Barclays. It's an equivalent, okay? So, I mean, think of it. It's such a brilliant strategy to use the possibility of financial gain to attract people into this system. But the powers that be are also greedy. They want to control this beast. Wall Street has managed to do something which the cryptocurrency pumpers could never, ever admit, which is it has managed to put the brakes on the explosion in price of Bitcoin. And they're doing that through the futures market. Oh boy. Long story, very, very short. Okay, I have to explain the futures market.
Yes, please.
Right. The futures market is a prearranged agreement on the future price of something at point X in the future. That came about in the mid 1800s primarily in the Midwest of the United States. That was an advantage to a flour mill, for example, because they could get X amount of tons of wheat at a certain grade at a certain point in the future. And the farmer would say, okay, yeah, I'll sign up because I'm getting a guaranteed price in the future.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all fine. But the fundamental law of supply and demand is still at work, okay? If you have a sudden economic catastrophe and you're one of only 10% of farmers who are able to deliver a certain amount of wheat, then the futures contract is not necessarily cast in stone. You could say, oh, you know what? I think that because 90% of the farmers around me can't deliver their wheat, that I think you better, pay me more. And then, of course, the factory owner will say, well, you signed a futures contract. And I said, yeah, that's right. I'm willing to risk making that contract void because I think somebody else will pay me more for it. So this is what we call margin call. In other words, you have to have a financial stake in the game, and that stake has to grow as the price of anything grows, or it has to fall if the price of anything falls. So what's the point of this whole long story? Again, the financial world is very complex. I'm trying to make it simple. Mm-hmm. The point is, Wall Street has managed to affect the supply-demand ratio of Bitcoin by creating futures contracts,
right,
which are nothing more than agreements to potentially buy Bitcoin at a certain price in the future. You're not actually buying or selling Bitcoin. All you're doing is you're putting a certain amount of money aside saying, okay, if the price is this at point Y in the future, then I will unleash my money to you and buy at that point. So it's artificially watering down or increasing the supply of Bitcoin. And the fundamental economic law is supply and demand, okay? If something is in great supply and demand is relatively constant, then the price will drop. And guess what? When futures contracts for Bitcoin came online, that was the very day when the price of Bitcoin started to plunge. And I don't think that's any coincidence.
No. This is kind of straying into something I wanted to sort of pick your brains about, because what you're kind of saying, and I'm grasping it in my layperson level, is that money is this whole stocks and shares and Wall Street, the way Wall Street currently operates, regardless of cryptocurrency, is it's all kind of it's kind of predictive. It doesn't actually exist. It's a form of gambling into the future. Is how we watched Jesse Ventura recently, whose episode on Wall Street, and it was really shocking to realize that there's this gambling that you're doing always kind of for the future, and you're trying to predict human behavior and how human behavior might respond to whatever, a crisis or a worry or a concern or a catastrophe and so on. And I came across, and I'm sure you've come across it, but I came across something a couple of years ago, and I did a wee bit of research on it. I found it I didn't understand most of it, but it was financial astrology, which I'm guessing you're familiar with. But it absolutely blew my mind that behavior, I think sometimes it's called behavioral economics or something, but it's based on the movement of the planets. And some strange belief in how not just the sun, moon, and stars, but our planets in particular, so even some of the moons in our solar system, really do allegedly and apparently, big names like Bill Meridian and who Hollywood top a celebs and politicians in the past, Nancy Reagan and all sorts of people. They consult astrologers, and stock market is based, some parts of it, only some, on astrology. So I find it. Can you talk at all about that and what you know of it, Leonard? Because I find it absolutely mind-boggling.
Okay, well, Melanie, I'm very impressed that you would be aware of these subjects. You just literally went from a bachelor level to a PhD thesis right there in terms of financial awareness. What you are getting into is exactly what Jesus said, which when he said, you cannot serve both God and money. And the word for money that he used was mammon. Now, that's an interesting word because mammon, if you look at literature throughout history, is demonic forces associated with money, which may or may not be true. Okay?
Right.
Remember, we're now getting into a world where perception is reality.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter whether or not it's true.
No.
What matters is the effect it has on people. Okay?
Yep.
So think about this. Now you're asking me to reveal the ending of my film, which I'm going to be purposely mum about.
Yeah, we said we did. Well done, you got him.
Yes. So let's just say that the film is going to end with a rabbi writing down the original name of Yeshua in Proto-Hebrew.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
That's all I'm going to say about it. Okay?
Okay.
Because it has everything to do with the New World Order. Okay? And for those of you who are serious Bible scholars, you already know the answer to that little riddle. Okay, so mammon, spirits associated with money. What is money? Money is an abstraction. It is a substitute for human life. I want to say that one more time, not because I have nothing else to say, but because you have to understand that, okay? Money is a substitute for human life. What do? Well, we do all kinds of things out there for money. We all have jobs, unless we're independently wealthy, and I don't think that applies to 99.5% of you. It doesn't apply to me. Okay, so we do all kinds of things for money so that we can spend it to get what we need, and if we have a little bit left over, what we want. And it's very hard for us to separate needs from wants. That's another issue. Satan loves twisting our needs into wants. He did that with Jesus. He came up with custom temptations designed specifically for Jesus at that point. Command these rocks to turn into bread. And Jesus had a scriptural reference to refute that. What Satan was trying to do was turn Jesus's immediate need for food into a illegitimately satisfied need. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So Satan was trying to trick Jesus into using his power illegitimately to satisfy his needs.
Yeah.
He was trying to get him to abuse his authority, and so by doing, nullify or disqualify Jesus from saving humanity. That's so important, okay? Same thing again. He took Jesus to a high place, and this is critical now. Satan showed Jesus all the kingdoms of the world. Now, you just stop and think about the reality of that verse.
Yeah.
To be able to show Jesus all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time requires the ability for Satan to bend reality as we know it.
extra dimensionality almost, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay. So again, perception becomes reality. Satan was the anointed cherub. He was the worship master. Okay. This is hard for me to understand, but the Bible says it in black and white. Okay. Satan's body before the fall, he fell, was luminous gemstones and settings of gold which made music as they moved. Again, it's hard for me to process that, but it's right there, okay? Satan took pride in himself. He thought that the light coming from him was of his own generation. It wasn't. It was literal manifestation of a light coming from the throne of God.
Yeah.
Right?
And he reflected that light with that jewel.
Absolutely. Okay.
That jewel sort of, yeah.
Right. So again, I'm painting a big picture here now. Again, Mel, you started on this rabbit trail, but it's so important, okay? I'm trying to get people to understand the whole significance of money, not just in financial terms, but also in spiritual terms. So, how skilled must Satan have been in order to convince a third of the angels who saw God create everything that we know and don't know into following him when he couldn't do that? I mean, how slick must you be in order to do that? And I think the answer comes back to, ironically enough, the quote-unquote marriage, if you will, between feminism and Islam. You create an enemy so that you are convincing yourself that you're the victim,
right?
Even though you are the one who's on the offensive.
Yeah.
So you have a position of strength from victimhood.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm again painting around the edges, and now we're going to develop the center of the image here. Everyone thinks that, oh, if I only had more money, then I could do this or do that. You know what? It's not about the money. It really isn't. if you tripled your income right now, do you think you would still have problems? Absolutely, okay? I can tell you right now that if you want to see how the real world works, look at the court transcripts of Dominic Strauss-Kahn, who was Christine Lagarde's predecessor.
Okay.
Christine Lagarde, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And Andy, you were alluding to something there with Christine Lagarde's fascination with numerology.
Numerology, yeah.
The point I'm making is all these people are into the occult, period.
Yeah.
Full stop, okay?
Now I'm going to test you numerology skills by asking you to think about the magic 7. Okay? Most of you will know that 7 is quite a number in all sorts of themes, religions, and I'm sure that you can compress numbers as well. So, if we think about 2014, all right, I'm just giving you 2014, you drop the 0, 14, 2 times 7. Okay, that's just by way of example, and we're going to carry on. So 2014 will be a milestone and hopefully a magic year in many respects. It will mark the 100th anniversary of the First World War back in 1914. It will mark the 70th anniversary, drop the 0, 7, of the Bretton Woods Conference that actually gave birth to the IMF. And it will be the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. 25th. Okay. It will also mark the 7th anniversary of the financial market jitters that quickly turned into the greatest global economic calamity since the Great Depression. The crisis still lingers. Yet, optimism is in the air. We've left the deep freeze behind us, and the horizon looks just a bit brighter. So my hope and my wish for 2014 is that after those 7 miserable years, weak and fragile, we have 7 strong years. Now, I don't know whether the G7 will have anything to do with it, or whether it will be the G20. I certainly hope that the IMF will have something to do with it.
So you should have gone to prison.
Oh, totally. Okay. So you know what? It's not about the money. It's about what the money can make you do, which is give you power. Okay.
Power.
Absolutely. Okay.
Power.
What can't you buy with money these days? I mean, you can even, I hate to say this, but this is a common delusion, so I'm going to bring this up, okay? You can buy prostitutes and call that love. It's a delusion. That's not love. It's just urges satisfied, period. That's all that it is, okay? You can buy yourselves drugs and think you're in heaven.
Yeah.
No, you're not. It's just a chemical substitute for what you think heaven is going to be like.
So what you're saying is you have to buy into that illusion for it to give you what you're having to buy into. Well, this alludes to your, the illusion of money. It's almost like it's a fetishistic sort of token that everybody has to believe in order for it to become a reality. You have to buy into it. Is that making sense, or is that what you understand what I mean, or am I making sense?
Oh, yes, you are. Because the reason why I called it the illusion of money is because I realized, and this is not taking the Lord's name in vain, I realized, my God, the Matrix is becoming reality.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That film, The Matrix from 1999, is so appropriate. What we're seeing now, and again, Hollywood understands what is going on, okay? And it uses its mass appeal, its mass distribution to affect and reinforce the culture into a certain set of guidelines according to an agenda. Okay. Steven Spielberg's latest film, I forget the title of it. I should recall this, but I don't. It just slips my mind. It's about a dystopic future world where everyone lives in shipping containers because that's all you can afford. And the way you escape from reality is by putting on a virtual reality headset, and then suddenly you're transported into whatever world you want to be in. Okay? We are seeing that now through internet addiction. I mean, it's bad now. But can you imagine when the mind-machine interface is only improved? How people will not want to live in reality. They will literally plug in and waste their entire life.
Yeah.
We call it digital heroin.
Yes.
Don't we, over here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, we're writing a song.
You're doing a song
We're doing a
about
song
it.
called Digital Heroin.
Yeah.
And it's a dead serious thing. We see our granddaughter or whatever, suddenly we've seen the effects of that. And actually, thankfully, my son just took off the technology off her and she's kind of like thawing out again now. But it's really scary. It's almost rewiring people's ways of behaving. Human beings aren't behaving like they have done for 6,000 years. They're changing the way they act through technology. And we're only seeing the early shoots of it now, aren't we? But the acceleration, the technology that's going to come down the pike is going to be something else. I mean, silicon and carbon mixing together and having a marriage. I don't know if you've seen that there was an interesting TED talk called The Age of Emulations, the future being the alternative emulations of human beings existing in a cyberspace or in a computer system. And it's the kind of thing of science fiction, but it's becoming science fact. Everything we can imagine is going to be happening. It says that, didn't it, with the Tower of Babel, and anything they imagined they could do, they would be able to. God said that. And man's desperate ability to try and attempt to become God or to sustain life or have eternal life. That's what it's all really coming. Man's always tried to do that, but now he thinks he really can do it. And I think that the enemy sees his opportunity here to show that, to put that carrot in front of us, and then play right into his hands. Really, he would love. I was always wondering how it would be fulfilled, where he would be worshipped. The beast would be worshipped. I know Scripture says that all slave or free, rich or poor, would worship him, and worship his image. I've always known that's going to be true, but I never knew how it would actually, couldn't imagine how that would actually be fully realized. And now we can see it, can't we, Leonard? We can see it's nearly here. Singularity, right. I want to call it.
Right. Again, Anthony Patch.
Oh, yeah.
Anthony Patch and Kev Baker are two people I just really adore. I've subscribed to the Entangled magazine from Anthony Patch. And whenever he's on Kev Baker, again, two other podcasters, which I recommend highly, they go at it for about 2 hours, and they don't do it. I think they do it about once every week. And I think, how on earth can you describe something new this week for 2 hours? And they always manage to blow me away. And one of the big intellectual hammers that hit my head about 3 months ago is, what is the temple? And if you're a Bible scholar, you will realize that the third and final temple on the Mount of Jerusalem is one thing, but that your body is also the temple. Okay, it's like, which is the correct signal here in a stereo speaker? Is it the left channel or the right channel? Well, it's both. They have... Right, the left channel and the right channel in a stereo signal have a unique signal, but it's also complementary. You can't have one without the other.
Right.
So, can you imagine the hubris of none other than Satan himself creating a literal substitute universe in which he can emerge as God and then turn to God and say, look what I have done. I have managed to turn all of humanity against you in my own universe. I am God. I too have created my own universe. And in this universe, there is no sickness, there is no old age, there is no Alzheimer's, etc. Okay? This is the big carrot. And we are chomping on that carrot, and it's all a lie because we know how the story ends. The script gets flipped, and the Bible says men will seek death and not find it.
Yeah, and that might come about because we've
engineered,
becoming integrated with nanotechnology or robotic, some sort of cyborgian.
It could be that. It could be literally that you can't die.
Right.
But how about if you're actually you are in a computer system like a matrix system?
Oh yeah.
You can't die. It's hell, isn't it? It's just absolutely hellish. I mean, I don't know how it's going to work out.
We saw an episode a few weeks ago from a series it's in Britain. I'm not sure whether you can get it anywhere else, but it's
Black Mirror.
Oh no, on Netflix.
Netflix, Black Mirror.
Black Mirror. Have you heard? Yeah, okay. And there's one episode there which is about this kind of quite a sad, lonely guy who goes home to his bedsit every night, but he's quite brilliant. He does computer programming and so on, but a lonely, unfulfilled existence, but he it's a complicated plot, but the point is he is able to recreate or the entities the people that he knows in real life becomes recreated
from their
DNA to exist within his
cyberspace,
this game that he's set up where he's the big hero and they all sort of have to bow down and adore him and do what he says and everything. But they are stuck there,
They're alternative M's.
They're alternative M's, and they have to live out that other existence. And I mean, the story, the plot twists in the end where he as the character is stuck in. It's a form of hell. Because he's stuck in cyberspace, where, in cyberspace no one hears you scream sort of thing because he's just stuck there. And they manage to get out and so on. But it's an intriguing concept, isn't it, that's the place where you can alternately exist.
It's very interesting that we talk about all these things. And the man is trying to do this side of eternity and trying to create heaven on earth or create, to have some form of escape. And yet, Jesus answers all the questions. He answers all these issues, isn't he? He is the escape. He is the portal. It's like they're all mimics of the real thing. Terrible mimics, of course, not, very dissatisfactory. But there are parallelisms, aren't they, to the true gospel? Jesus is the way out, of the matrix. He is the rebel. He is your Neo, if you know what I mean. The one who came into our matrix. And he's had to come into it like an ant has to save a whole lot of ants that are in an anthill, and there's a tractor coming to come run over it or something. How do you warn the ants to get out of that matrix? Which we could say it's come about as a result of the fall and some bad situation. Then you become an ant, go into the anthill and warn them all. And then they get saved, and it's a bit like Jesus coming from the fourth, the heavenly dimension into our 3 dimensions, becoming a real 3-dimensional person, taking off his glorified 4th dimension, or whatever you want to call it, heavenly body that dwells in heaven, and entering into ours to rescue us, to give us this amazing message that if we just believe it, something transforms us. We are literally changed, born again. Our spirit is born again, and I don't think probably as Christians we probably aren't aware of just how dynamic that is. We don't see it. We see it through glass darkly, But it's so encouraging.
And therefore, whatever the enemy would put in its place you can only see then that it's truly pathetic, and it's like it's not a deal at all. It doesn't even begin to equate. Even though, as you were saying, Leonard, he has set himself up as God and no disease and no, those kind of concepts. But it's because one thing he can't offer is the glorified body. He cannot offer that in any way, shape, or form. And we've, anyone that taps into the matrix or maybe gets signed up to some sort of mark of the beast existence, living inside some sort of computerized matrix system. It's very interesting because that denies the God-given pleasures of living corporeally inside a body, the pleasures of the flesh, in the God-given way, which is about existing in this thing, seeing with your eyes, being able to touch the breeze, being able to,
Well, it's very interesting to say that because it's kind of a Gnostic.
You can't offer that.
It's kind of a Gnostic problem, isn't it? The AI technological thing, because the Gnostic view is that physicality is somehow evil and spirit is good. Denies the physicality, yet God said he made all things and said it was good. And then he even gets incarnated as a man, which is good. And so there's nothing, the biblical understanding of physicality is good. It's sin that's the problem. And
that's the other thing that he can't offer either. That other world that you're going to live in is going to be full of all your worst aspects of yourself, your fantasies. Let's say you want to be a despot, or you want to be some sort of, I don't know, psychopathic megalomaniac. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
All those things that you might want to dream of being in your worst aspects of yourself would be fulfilled there, wouldn't they? And it would be sin all the way down. All the way.
I mean, think of your worst addictions, okay? Sexual addiction, alcohol addiction, drug addiction. Imagine being able to fulfill all your desires, okay? Even physically, if you don an electronic suit, okay? If you think smartphone addiction is bad now, and people are literally dying daily after being hit by some vehicle because they're too busy looking down at their smartphone. If you think it's bad now, my word, okay, think of the old days when dinosaurs still walked this earth and we didn't have the internet. I mean, I honestly think people...
Remember the dinosaurs.
Yeah. I think people were overall happier.
Yeah.
That's so ironic. And you know what? I refuse now to debate atheists who post below my videos because, I'm thinking about developing a short little video, welcoming the atheist's retort, saying, you're only fulfilling your desires, you're only following your intellectual idol, which you have made, and you think that by fulfilling your dopamine hit that the internet is allowing you or affording you, that you have some kind of leg up on me. So I say, congratulations on being God in your own world. In the meantime, you cannot explain the origin, purpose, and destiny of your life. So, enjoy.
Yeah, bang on.
Temporary.
Bang on.
I mean, and
on top of that, you've got the absolute seduction of the transhumanist stream, the posthumanist stream, where if you can change, however you would change your DNA so that, women, you want longer eyelashes, you want bigger breasts, you want longer legs, you want whatever it is. Hey, that's possible. So women are going to go for it. Men, you want to be the heroes that big brawn and muscle and whatever is the dream that men would want to be. It can be theirs. Children, you want to be some sort of superhero. You go to the movies. Of course, you want to be a superhero. Little boys, little girls, they've all got there. You want to be I'm being gender specific here, but some sort of princess sort of person or some sort of adventurer with and all those things are going to be possible in theory with the transhumanist dream. So what is there? How are you not going to be seduced in the flesh by those things being on offer? I would say it would be very hard unless you're owned, by Jesus, unless, you're possessed by him. And
Yeah, you often think, well, how did everyone end up taking the mark? But it's going to be so obvious and so logical to take the mark.
Seductive.
I mean, if you didn't believe in Jesus, you'd just think, well, why not? If I'm just evolved bit of pond slime, why not just try and get the best out of your life? You might live 70 years if you're lucky. All right, just go for it. I mean, because what it does, it reveals a worldview that is non-eternal. It reveals a worldview that is totally in the here and now and no further. That's what and the devil always tries to get you in the moment. That's what sin's like, isn't it? He always tries to get you. Do it now. God will forgive you later, or whatever. And as soon as you do it, he'll go, "No, he won't." He'll accuse you. He's always trying to get man in the moment and get him off balance. That's what he knows. That's what he did with Adam. That's what, getting Eve in the moment. Come on. What about the future or the rest of eternity? Just have that. Come on. Step away from God. It'll be all right. And I think the mark of the beast will just be offering a bowl of soup for anyone who wants to get rid of their inheritance.
That is so true. I mean, when I think of what happened in the fall of Adam and Eve had everything that Satan was trying to offer them. It was a cruel substitute.
Right.
And you know what? Again, I've said this before, but it's worth repeating. History is rapidly coming full circle. This whole substitute reality, the combination of cryptocurrencies and the blockchain and artificial intelligence and nanotechnology and 5G, all these technologies that are combining, okay, it's not just one thing, it's everything, okay? And, hey, when the future economic crisis happens, I mean, you too would want your guaranteed monthly income. We'll just pay you these electronic credits that we issue out of thin air, and you can use them to buy whatever. And eventually we'll tighten up the controls, and you can't buy this and you can't buy that. And, eventually what used to be such promised paradise turns out to be a curse. And it's, like I said, it's a cruel substitute.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking the other day about the kind of difference between, knowledge that people have used throughout the ages. We were looking at Mithraism because Mel and my son Joe went down to London to look at a Mithraic temple because he's studying Mithraism for his degree. And it's very kind of parallel to the things along Christianity. But the difference with all things like that, like Freemasonry and forms of Gnosticism, is that it's about knowledge, getting knowledge yourself, information, and somehow getting to God or getting to the truth that way. And yet biblical Christianity is just simple belief in Jesus by faith, and turning to him and believing in him. And then he downloads a whole lot of information and knowledge in its right appropriate way to you. It's the other way around. You've got two kind of paths in the world. One is working your way to God or working your way to knowledge or information about God. And then you can't know God. You can only know about this controller of chaos or something, or whatever God it is, all the gods that are worshipped. It's different with Yahweh.
Isn't that the exact line in the garden? Isn't that exactly what he said?
Right.
Eat from this tree, you'll know good from evil and so on. But knowledge, first.
Like Leonard said, they already had a relationship because they already knew. It's like, I tell you what, have a downgrade.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's good. No, isn't it strange?
It is. Well, it certainly is strange days, and I wanted you to talk about your album.
Nice segue.
Oh, yes.
Beautiful. Just flattened. Yeah. We bought a new album out. Thanks for mentioning it. Yeah. Strange days indeed.
Okay, you have to explain to everyone about the front cover because I'm looking at it again and again, and I'm going, what is the story behind this superhero outfit holding up a Domino's pizza box in the middle of where?
The Birmingham city centre.
Broad Street.
Broad Street.
Where we live.
Oh, it's loaded with layers of symbolism.
We can't let you know.
We can't let you.
Only initiates can understand knowledge.
I'm going to be up all night now, right, trying to think of what's going on in that cover.
There's not a lot going on at all. It's just a stupid bloke standing in the thing in the road.
No, we had the kind of idea of a superhero, hence the Spider-Man costume kind of thing, who is, tired in this world, who's a bit past it, maybe put on a bit of weight, smoking too many fags, looking at his iPhone all the time. So we had that kind of idea, didn't we? Which, of having that person holding up a placard. And we thought, what's more kind of sad than when you do see people in town centres who are having to stand there all day advertising some, third-rate or fourth-rate pizza company kind of thing, all day, and that's literally, like you're saying, it's your time, you're giving away your human life in pieces for money, money is human life measured out, isn't it? But that kind of sadness was one of the concepts we had, wasn't it?
Yeah. Where we live, I mean, it's in the freezing cold. I've just driven past so many people advertising pizza. They're dressed up as superheroes, and I just maybe not want to buy their pizza. I thought that's cruel. That's a slave labor. It's just like, but I mean, that's just one aspect of it. But I mean, our name, Dissident Prophet, fits the Domino's Pizza logo, and our mate Adrian had been using it, and we thought, well, tell you what, we'll advertise ourselves in the middle of the road. In fact, it's very funny, actually, when we were doing the photo session, so many people came up and just like, oh, that's interesting, and they take a photograph and stick it on Instagram. So I was thinking, actually, we should probably do it all the time.
It was meant to be a kind of, we were actually meant it in the opposite, in the sense that, as our namesake, Dissident Prophet, you're standing in the middle of a highway and no one's taking a blind bit of notice of you. You've got a different message, perhaps. Fish swimming in different direction, and everyone else is just swimming past you, and not interested. But as you say, ironically, lots of people took interest.
Well, you created something so bizarre that it makes people, take a double take, right?
Yeah, it was the tiger head, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's our son, actually. It's our son who dressed up.
That was our son.
Okay.
I was a superhero as a kid. When I was about 9, I did create my own superhero.
Oh.
Okay, folks, we're just going to cut it there, and we'll play the rest of it next week. In the meantime, keep your eyes on the prize, keep your eyes on Jesus, and we'll see you then. God bless.